What's the worst thing you've seen on someone else's phone? Oh man, I'll never forget this one. It still makes my skin crawl. A few years ago, I was hanging out at my friend's apartment. We were just chilling, having a few drinks, and messing around on our phones. At some point, he handed me his phone to show me a funny meme, and while I was scrolling, a notification popped up from someone named Daddy's Girl. Now, I've known this guy for years. He's single, no girlfriend, no situationship, nothing. So I jokingly said, "Damn, bro, you hiding a sugar baby or something?" And he kinda laughed it off, saying it's just someone he's been talking to. Whatever, not my business. Fast forward a bit, he goes to the bathroom and leaves his phone on the couch. Another message pops up from the same contact, and I swear to God I wasn't trying to snoop, but my eyes just caught the preview text. It said, "I missed last night, Daddy. Can't wait to see you again. Mommy still thinks I'm at my friend's house, LOL." At first I thought, oh, he's just into some weird kink, whatever. But something in my gut told me to not ignore this. I opened his contacts. My hands were literally shaking when I saw the full name of the contact. It was his 16-year-old cousin. I felt my stomach drop. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, just hoping I was reading it wrong, hoping it was some messed up joke. But the messages were there, dozens of them. Some were just flirty, but others were bad. Photos. I won't describe them, but they were enough to make me feel like throwing up. I locked his phone, sat there frozen, not knowing what the hell to do. My mind was racing between calling him out, calling the cops, or just getting the hell out of there. When he came back from the bathroom, I must have looked pale as hell because he immediately knew I saw something. He didn't say anything, he just stared at me. I stood up, grabbed my stuff, and said, "I gotta go." He didn't stop me, didn't even ask what was wrong. I think he knew what was about to happen. I left, sat in my car, and had a full-blown panic attack. After calming down, I did what I had to do. I reported him. I gave them screenshots, names, everything. He was arrested 2 days later. I lost a friend, but I don't regret it for a second. Alright, this one still haunts me. A few years ago, I was at work, and one of my coworkers, let's call him Mike, asked to borrow my charger. He gave me his phone to plug it in, and as soon as I connected it, the screen lit up with his gallery open. At first, I wasn't really paying attention, but then my eyes caught something off. It was a photo of a girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in what looked like a bathroom. At first I thought, okay, maybe it's his niece or something. But then I noticed the next few photos. They were screenshots from a hidden camera. My heart started pounding. I didn't even want to scroll, but my brain just froze. There were dozens of these images, some of them clearly taken from a bathroom stall, others from under desks, all of them showing women and young girls who had no idea they were being filmed. I looked up at Mike and he was just casually chatting with someone, completely unaware that I was seeing his disgusting little secret. My stomach was in knots. I wanted to grab his phone and smash it right there, but I knew I had to be smart about this. I locked his phone, set it down, and acted completely normal. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and immediately started shaking. I knew I had to report him, but I needed proof. So I went to my desk, pulled up my company's security footage, I worked in IT, and found the moment where he handed me his phone. I recorded everything. My reaction, the screen lighting up, the photos. Then I took the footage and his name straight to HR and security. Within 2 hours, police were in the building. They pulled him out mid-shift, confiscated his phone, and escorted him out in handcuffs. Turns out, he had been doing this for years. Not just at work, but in public bathrooms, schools, and even his own family's house. The worst part? His wife had no idea. She showed up crying, completely in shock. She filed for divorce immediately. He went to prison, and last I heard, he's never getting out. I still get chills thinking about it. If his phone hadn't lit up at that exact moment, who knows how much longer he would have kept getting away with it. This one still freaks me out when I think about it. A few years ago, I was at work and my coworker Dave asked me to help him with something on his phone. He wasn't very tech savvy, so I figured it was something simple. He handed me his phone, already unlocked, and asked me to fix an issue with his email app. As I was navigating through his settings, I accidentally swiped into his notes app. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but my eyes caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach drop. It was a list, a very specific list. At first, I thought it was some kind of shopping list or reminders, but as I looked closer, I realized it was a detailed log of names. Each name had a description next to it. Things like brunette, always walks alone after work, blue backpack, blonde, 5 feet 4 inches, lives in apartment 3B, runs every morning at 6 a.m. Redhead, bartender, never locks her back door. There were dates next to some of them, locations. Some even had license plate numbers. My blood went ice cold. I locked his phone and handed it back, acting like I didn't see anything. My mind was racing. This wasn't just weird. This was stalker level disturbing. For the rest of the day, I kept watching him. Dave was completely normal, laughing, making small talk, doing his work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. That night, I told my roommate, who immediately said, "Dude, that sounds like he's keeping tabs on women he's stalking." The next morning, I called in sick and went straight to the police. I didn't know if what I saw was illegal on its own, but I figured they could at least look into it. A few days later, Dave didn't show up for work. Then, we heard that he'd been arrested. Apparently, when the police looked into him, they found way more than just a list. They found hidden cameras outside apartments, GPS trackers on random cars, and folders of surveillance photos on his computer. I still don't know what his end goal was, but I don't want to think about it. If I hadn't seen that list by accident, who knows what could have happened? Alright, here's another one that still haunts me. A couple of years ago, I was at a house party with some friends. It was a chill night. Drinks, music, people playing games. At one point, my friend Matt asked me to take a picture of him and his girlfriend. He handed me his phone, and as I opened the camera app, I accidentally swiped left into his photo gallery. The first thing I saw was a video. The thumbnail looked weird. It was dark, grainy, and had a person in it. Without thinking, I tapped on it, and that's when I realized what I was looking at. It was a hidden camera video taken inside a bathroom. I froze. My brain refused to process it at first, but after a few seconds, it was clear as day. The angle was low, like the camera had been placed under the sink or behind something. The person in the video had no idea they were being recorded. My hands started shaking. I swiped back to his gallery, and that's when I saw dozens of videos. Different locations, different women. Some were changing clothes, some were in public restrooms. I looked up at Matt, who was laughing and drinking with his girlfriend, completely oblivious to the fact that his secret was out. I felt sick. This wasn't just creepy, this was illegal. I locked his phone, handed it back, and tried to act normal, but inside, I was losing it. I pulled aside my other friend Eric and told him everything. He thought I was joking at first, but when he saw my face, he knew I wasn't. We had no idea what to do. If we confronted Matt, he'd just deny it or maybe even try to delete everything. So we made a plan. The next day, Eric borrowed Matt's phone while he was asleep. We took screenshots of everything and sent them to ourselves. Then we contacted the police. Matt was arrested within a week. Turns out he had been doing this for years. He had hidden cameras in his own house and had been recording guests without them knowing. The police found even more footage on his computer. He's in prison now. I still can't believe I used to be friends with someone like that. This one still haunts me. A few years ago, I was at a house party, just chilling and drinking with some friends. One of the guys, let's call him Mike, got super wasted and passed out on the couch. At some point, his phone started buzzing non-stop with notifications. One of my friends jokingly picked it up and said, "Damn, dude, who's blowing up your phone?" Mike was dead asleep, so my friend just glanced at the screen. Suddenly, his face went pale, and he just froze. I asked what was up, and he just handed me the phone without saying a word. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was a bunch of messages from an unknown number, all saying things like, "I see you. How does it feel knowing I'm watching? That blue hoodie looks good on you." At first, I thought it was just some creepy prank, but then I scrolled up. There were weeks worth of messages, all one-sided. Dozens of texts, some with photos taken from a distance. Photos of Mike at work, at the grocery store, even one of him sitting in his car at a red light. The worst one? A photo of him sleeping in his own bed, taken from outside his bedroom window. At this point, we were freaking out. Mike was still too drunk to wake up, and we didn't know what to do. One of my friends grabbed his phone and called the number. No answer. Called again, straight to voicemail. Then, a new text popped up. "Why are your friends looking at my messages?" We noped the hell out of there and woke Mike up immediately. He was still too out of it to fully process what was happening, but when we showed him the messages, he sobered up real fast. He had no idea who it was. He thought it was some prank at first, but we convinced him it was serious. We drove him home, checked all his locks, and told him to call the police. The next morning, Mike went to the cops, but nothing really came of it because there was no proof of who it was. The number was untraceable. The messages suddenly stopped after that night, and to this day, he never figured out who was watching him. I still wonder what would have happened if we never checked his phone that night. This one still gives me chills. A few years ago, I was at work and my coworker, let's call him Dan, asked me to help him fix something on his phone. He wasn't very tech savvy, so I didn't think much of it. I took his phone and started troubleshooting. While I was waiting for an app to update, I accidentally swiped left, opening his photo gallery, and that's when I saw it. A video, a really disturbing video. At first, I couldn't process what I was looking at. It was footage from a hidden camera, but not just any hidden camera. It was a bathroom, specifically our office bathroom. I froze. My brain refused to accept what I was seeing. The angle, the timestamp. It was recent. I could see people I worked with, completely unaware they were being recorded. I felt physically sick. Dan must have noticed my reaction because he snatched his phone out of my hands. His face went pale. "You didn't see anything," he muttered. I didn't even respond. I just got up and walked straight to HR, then to security, then to the police. Long story short, Dan was arrested within 24 hours. They found multiple hidden cameras in the office, and it turned out he'd been doing this for months. He's in prison now, and honestly, good. But the worst part? Some of my friends were in those videos. People I cared about. People who had no idea someone was violating their privacy like that. And if I hadn't seen that video by accident, he probably would have kept doing it for years. This one still haunts me. A few years ago, I was hanging out at a friend's place. There were a few of us just chilling, playing video games, and at some point my friend Matt asked if I could look something up on his phone since he was busy playing. I grabbed his phone, opened the browser, and as soon as I tapped the search bar, it showed recent searches. And there it was, how to dispose of a body without getting caught. I actually laughed at first, thinking it was some kind of joke. Maybe he was watching a crime documentary or reading about some movie plot, but then I scrolled down. The next search, does burning a body remove all evidence? Then, how deep to bury a body so animals won't find it? I felt my stomach drop. I looked over at Matt, who was just casually playing, completely unfazed. I don't know what came over me, but I pretended like I hadn't seen anything. I put his phone down and acted normal. Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling, so when I got home, I started looking up missing persons reports in our area. And guess what? A girl had gone missing 2 weeks prior. She was last seen at a party that Matt was at. I didn't know what to do. I mean, what if it was just some weird curiosity? People Google dumb stuff all the time, right? But what if it wasn't? The next day, I told another friend in our group. He was freaked out too, so we decided to report it anonymously. I don't know what the cops did with the tip, but a couple of months later, Matt moved away, just up and left. No warning, no explanation. To this day, I have no idea if it was just a coincidence or if I was sitting next to a murderer. This one still gives me chills, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. It all started a few years ago when I was crashing at my buddy Eli's place. We'd been friends since high school, and our group would often hang out at his apartment, playing games or just goofing off. One night it was just me and him. Everyone else had bailed, and we were chilling, catching up on life. Out of nowhere, he said he needed to step out for a bit, but asked me to watch his phone while he was gone. Something about a work call, I don't know. Normally I would have just left the phone alone, but I had a weird habit back then of snooping. Nothing crazy, just glancing at messages if they popped up. Anyway, I noticed his phone was unlocked, which was odd because he was usually super protective about his phone. He'd never left it lying around open like that. So, of course, I took a glance at his notifications. There were a couple of messages, but then I noticed something strange in his photo gallery. It wasn't a picture he took, it was a screenshot, and the screenshot was of a text conversation. I don't know why, but I opened it. The conversation was between Eli and someone named Sarah. The first text from her said, "You better not have told anyone. I swear, if this gets out, we're both done." Eli responded with, "Don't worry, nobody knows. I'm in too deep for it to go public." The next one, "Are you sure it's taken care of? I don't want to be caught. I can't go back to jail." My heart started racing. I wasn't sure if I should keep reading, but I couldn't stop. The next message from Eli was, "It's done. There's no trace left. Nobody will find out." I was starting to panic. What the hell was I reading? Was this some kind of joke? Or was I in the middle of something serious? Then the photos showed up. The first one was of a young woman, probably in her late 20s. The photo was blurry, but I could see enough to recognize she wasn't anyone I'd ever seen before. She was unconscious, her face bruised, her clothes disheveled. I felt my stomach twist. I scrolled to the next photo. This one showed a picture of a wooded area, and there was a large shovel leaning against a tree. The caption from Eli said, "Had to bury her where no one would find her." By this point, I was almost frozen, staring at the screen. Was this a joke? Was he messing with me? But everything in my gut told me it wasn't. It felt too real. I didn't know what to do. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know if I should tell someone, call the cops, or confront him. I knew that if I confronted him, I'd never get the truth out of him. He was one of those guys who always had an answer for everything, even if it was a lie. So I did what anyone would do in that moment. I closed the phone and pretended I didn't see anything. When Eli came back, I acted like nothing was wrong, but inside, I was dying. For the next few days, I stayed away from him. I didn't text, didn't call, just kept my distance. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. A week later, I heard from a mutual friend that Sarah, the woman in the conversation, had disappeared. Apparently nobody had heard from her for days, and she'd been reported missing. I don't know if it was related, but that screenshot haunts me. I didn't report it to anyone because I was terrified, but part of me always wondered if I should have. If I had, would someone have found her? Would she still be alive today? To this day, I haven't heard from Eli since then. He dropped off the radar and moved away, and I don't think I'll ever reach out to him again, but I'll never forget those screenshots and those messages. I don't know if I'll ever really know what happened, but I'll never look at Eli the same way again. This one is pretty unsettling, and I haven't shared it with anyone until now. I'll never forget what happened. It was about a year ago, and I was in a pretty serious relationship with this girl, Lily. We'd been dating for 6 months, and everything seemed pretty normal. We had our ups and downs, but nothing too major. Anyway, one night we were hanging out at her place, and she asked me to grab something from her purse while she was in the bathroom. Her purse was lying on the couch next to me. As I reached for it, I noticed that her phone was sitting right on top of her bag. It was unlocked. Normally, I wouldn't snoop. I trust her, and I've always been the kind of guy who respects privacy, but for some reason that day, I just felt this strange urge to look. I didn't go straight into her messages or anything, but as I picked up the phone, I noticed a notification from a guy named Ben. Now I'd heard of Ben before. He was her ex, the guy she'd mentioned once or twice. From what I gathered, they were still on decent terms, even though they'd broken up a year ago. But this message caught my attention. The notification was from Ben, and the preview of the text read, "You know we can't just stop what we've been doing. I'm not going to let you go." I immediately felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I knew I shouldn't have read it, but I felt this weird compulsion to find out what was going on. So, against my better judgment, I unlocked the phone and went straight into her messages. I started scrolling, and it didn't take long to realize something wasn't adding up. There were hundreds of messages between Lily and Ben, not just casual chats, but long, flirtatious conversations. And these weren't the kinds of messages you send to a friend. They were intimate, crossing boundaries I wasn't aware existed in their relationship. Messages like, "I miss how you feel when we're alone. I'm counting the days until I can see you again. Last time was so perfect. I can't stop thinking about you." My heart was pounding in my chest. I felt like I was seeing something I shouldn't have. Then I noticed something else. There were photos, several of them, of Lily and Ben together. Some were of them at a party, but there were others that were more personal, the kind of photos that you send to someone you're involved with. Not exactly nudes, but very suggestive and intimate. My mind was racing. All this time, I thought she had been loyal to me, but here I was, staring at proof of something I never thought was happening. Then, my stomach dropped when I saw a final message from Ben. "You said you were done with him, but we both know the truth. He's just the front. You and I both know what we really have." I felt like the floor was about to give way beneath me. Lily had been cheating on me with her ex. They'd been seeing each other for months, right under my nose. I had no idea. She was telling me she loved me, and meanwhile, she was with him in secret. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her right then? Should I just walk away and pretend I didn't know? By the time Lily came back into the room, I had closed the phone and shoved it back into her purse. She didn't suspect a thing, but I was numb. I could barely even look at her. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't want to make a scene, but it was eating me alive inside. Over the next few days, I became distant. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. Finally, I decided I had to know for sure if this was all real, so I confronted her. I asked if there was anything she needed to tell me. I told her I'd seen the messages and the photos. Her face went pale. She started stuttering, and eventually the truth came out. She admitted everything. She told me that she'd been seeing Ben on and off, and she hadn't planned on getting caught. She said she loved me, but couldn't let go of him either. I didn't know how to feel. I was devastated. The trust I'd put in her, the future I thought we'd had, all shattered in a single conversation. I broke up with her right there. She begged me to stay to work things out, but it was over. I deleted her number, blocked her on everything, and never looked back. But sometimes, I still wonder if I never looked at her phone, how much longer I would have been living in the dark. Would I have found out eventually? Would she have come clean? Or would I have just stayed in the dark forever, believing everything was fine? Either way, it's a lesson I'll never forget. If you ever get the feeling something's off, don't ignore it. It's better to know the truth, even if it hurts. This happened a few months ago, and it still messes with my head. I was dating this girl, Chloe, for about 7 months. We had an amazing connection. Everything seemed perfect, and I was really falling for her. I thought she was the one. One night I was at her place, and her phone was sitting on the table. It had buzzed a couple of times while we were watching a movie, and I didn't think much of it. But then, it buzzed again. Normally, I wouldn't even think of looking at someone else's phone, but something in me just clicked, and I glanced at the screen. It was a message from a contact I didn't recognize. It read, "We're still on for tomorrow, right?" I froze. Why wouldn't she mention a tomorrow plan? We hadn't talked about any plans for the next day. My curiosity got the best of me, and I unlocked her phone. She was always leaving it unlocked. I didn't think much of it. I went into the messages and saw a whole thread of text between her and this guy named Adam. And it wasn't just friendly messages. They were flirting, heavy flirting, the kind of stuff I never thought she would say to another guy. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow," one message said. "You always know how to make me smile," said another. I could feel my heart drop. I felt so betrayed in that moment, like everything we'd built together was a lie. But then I scrolled up and it hit me even harder. There were pictures. They were recent too. Photos of Chloe in lingerie, selfies of her smiling and looking at the camera while in his arms, and some other pretty intimate stuff that made my stomach churn. I just sat there for a moment, trying to process what was happening. How could she do this? I didn't confront her right away. I was in shock, just staring at the screen, but eventually I had to know the truth. So I asked her directly, "Who's Adam?" She froze, her face going pale. I could see the panic in her eyes. She started stuttering, trying to make up excuses. She said it was just a friend, and they had been texting for a while, but it wasn't anything serious. But I knew it was more than that. I broke up with her that night. I couldn't trust her anymore. I told her to leave. To this day, I still don't understand how someone I trusted so much could betray me like that. I never looked at her phone again, but that moment changed everything. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's hard to put it back together.